You are listening to the Level Up Your Gaming Podcast, episode 142, Food, Music, and Art in Games. In today's episode, we discuss food, music, and art in games. We discuss how you can flesh out your world by adding these elements to your games. We also discuss how you can use these items to inform players of different situations in your games. If you'd like to participate in the discussion or leave us feedback, you can contact us at levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com or find us on Facebook at facebook.com/levelupyourgaming. If you like the content and want to hear more of the show, subscribing will ensure you don't miss an episode. New episodes come out almost every Wednesday. Also, please review, tell a friend about the podcast, or share with your gaming group. Now sit back and enjoy the episode. Welcome to the Love of Gaming Podcast. My name is Aaron, and joining me virtually, because I got it right this time, Josh. Welcome into the Love Up Gaming Podcast. My name is Aaron, and joining me virtually once again, I've got Josh. Josh, how you doing today? That's the joke. I'm trying to get Josh to chuckle through this this little error that we had here.
I don't mind. I enjoy our conversations, and I think that what we discuss is helping me put together some of my games right now. So, and I hope it's helping the listeners as well.
I always hope it helps the listeners. I know through the years of doing this, wow, it's been years now. There have been multiple reach outs from different listeners about different topics that we've done. And we've gotten a lot of good feedback on them, and, lots of ways to kind of paint your world and make your world creative and interesting. And, it's one of the things that we're going to be talking about here today. So,
yeah. Well, I always thought that it's useful if you're trying to sort of fill in your world is to use some of the things that you personally know. They say write what you know. And this topic is very much what I know because I like to cook.
I also like to cook. I don't usually bring it into my games, but I like to cook. And I'll make that point about KYP before I get this thing started. That's why I don't bring it in my games. And I've got a fun little story about it, but we'll get started. So what are we talking about? We're talking about food, music, and art in your world. This is like the window dressing on your game. And why would you do this?
Well, the reason I like to keep food, music, and art as sort of backdrop, window dressing, fills in some of the stuff. It helps ground your world. There's no group of people anywhere that don't eat or have some music or some art that they either enjoy or create. People do that. That's what we're doing here when we're playing these games also, is that we're creating some interactive art. And there's food, music, and art, because they are created by everybody. They're also created, they incorporate a lot of the things that are about those people. So you can use it to sort of inform your world. It can tell your players what's going on. And I think it makes stories more interesting to have sort of those non-essential parts of a story in there, because it makes the world more vibrant. It makes the world more real. And there's little things that fill it in. So you're not just, if you want to run, a hack and slash dungeon crawl, by all means. But every single room being a 10 by 10 stone, nothing is going to get boring. You got to put something in there. And I think that these are a great way to start filling things in.
You're right. It really does flesh out the world around you. And that's really kind of what adding these little details do. They are, we've often referred to the construction of your game as like building a cake. Okay, you can't decorate a cake if you've never baked one. So you have to bake the cake first. That's the meat of your story. Okay. And then, you frost it. And then these are like you piping roses onto the cake. Okay.
Yeah.
This is the very last thing that you should be doing to add flavor to your world, to give it that, je ne sais quoi. What if
That's certain something. Yes, absolutely. Well, I think thinking about these things, they exist in your world. Whether or not you've talked about them, whether or not you've thought about them, they have to exist within your world in some way. And if you don't include them, they can be like there's something missing. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to spend all your time on it. It doesn't need to be a main focus, but acknowledging that these things exist can help sort of flesh out and make your world seem more full. And I think it is important to note, I'm not saying to put in every single instance of food, music, or art. You don't have to explain every meal that your players are eating, or that they walk down the street and the smell of every bakery they walk past, every little bit of painting on the wall, or drawing on the sidewalk. That gets a little crazy.
A good example of this would be like you walk into a banquet and you meet the Earl. Okay, that is a description of a scene. Okay, that's a thing that can happen. Or you could say you walk into a banquet. There are platters of food everywhere. The duck and pheasant are rampant in this place. The art is dripping off the walls. You have priceless paintings. You have chandeliers. The opulence of the room is impressive, and a little string quartet is playing in the background. Okay, gives it a little bit of a description. You don't need to go deeper than that. You don't need to explain that they're playing the the fleur de lis, and they're doing it's traditional song and dance, and there's people waltzing about. If you want to go that deep, I guess you could, and then you could go find some weird like bardcore song to play in the background or something. But there's too much, and then there's like just enough. And I think the point that we're making is, you don't always need to express every little thing, but it does help set a scene a little bit better. Okay, I'm gonna call out a friend, Ken. Ken loves to cook. Okay, and if you ever go into a scene where you order something at a tavern or a bar with Ken, Ken will find the special and he'll explain to you exactly how that special is made. Spend like 10 minutes doing it. And God bless him for doing it, but you don't need to do it.
Well, I think if you go too far into any one of these things, like, yes, window dressing is great. Having them exist within the world is great. But if you put too much effort into any one of these things, it stops being window dressing and starts being a focal point. And what you're going to end up with is sort of like a Chekhov's gun, or a Chekhov's standing rib roast, if you will, where it has to be now part of the story. And we don't want that. We're putting it in there for effect, to fill in the world. So yeah, know your party. Don't go crazy with it. Make sure that they exist, but don't make it story.
That's a good point. If you focus too much on the detail of any single thing, then your players might unnecessarily focus in on something that you didn't want them to look at. You were just trying to be really creative with your description.
Yeah. And I think the idea of, your example there of a banquet is a perfect way to go into this next part, is that the NPCs in your world want these things. They'll want food, they'll want music, they'll want art, whatever it is. And so displaying it and showing it up is going to inform you of the people that are involved. It's there for information. It is not there to be the story. So
I mean, I think in that scenario right there, I didn't call out any one thing, but maybe you do specifically call out, again, this is the Chekhov's gun, or the Chekhov's standing rib roast, or the Chekhov's painting, whatever you want to use in this case. You can point out that he has a very particular painting. You recognize it's very famous. Those are things that maybe then you want your players to pick up on, so they have some information that maybe they can use to carouse with said
Mhm.
person.
And that is then part of the story. You have now taken window dressing and have sort of fed into this. Now, any of these things, food, music, and art, they are very informative of the people that are in your world. So in your case, you're talking about like rich banquet food. You said duck, and you had platters of food, and you said art dripping off the walls, string quartet, even. These are all signs of opulence. These are all signs of, excessive wealth just being put on display for the sake of it. And that really does inform the player. You can do the same thing in the other direction. If you've got poor food, you've got, a dingy lit tavern, and all they're serving is like a watery gruel, and there's somebody who is sitting in the corner with a lute with two strings broken, just sort of pounding on it, just angry and sort of screaming. Um, that's also music and art that's going on that, and that really informs that as well. This is a poor area. This is an angry place. And you can get a lot of information about the town, about the NPCs into a very small time without having to go, and the NPC comes up to you and tells you their troubles. No, you can just sort of like get that from the environment they're in by what they're doing, by what their entertainment is even.
Yeah, I mean, it keeps you informed. Again, you're right. It informs you of the area, informs you of the status of the people around you. So you could ask, or the GM could try and give the context clues as to what's going on in the area. If you want to express that this might be an area of disease, maybe there's some subplot around that. The description of the standards of living allow you to be able to kind of play into that and allow you to kind of move in that direction. It lets players be able to maybe dive deeper onto something. You're just adding descriptors to stuff around the world.
Yeah, and I think when you are planning out your environment, the place where your character is going to be, paying attention to this is useful. Like I said, it doesn't need to be front and center, but having it there is really nice. If your players are going from town to town, let's say it's a fantasy setting, you can use the food to sort of describe the area. If they just walked in, through fields of grain, and the people in the city, the poor section doesn't have access to bread. They're, eating trash. And you go into the rich part of town, and they've got bakeries everywhere and fresh bread. Well, there's an income disparity, and you've got possible rising conflict going on there between the rich and the poor. If you go to a seaside town, and it's the same thing, you've got parts of the town could have foreign foods, which means you've got a strong trade route, and that's interesting as well. You can exploit that for good story. But that's food. Let's talk about music for a second here. Music is extremely important for your games. And I don't just mean the kind that you play in the background. You can actually have, storytelling going on in your music.
You talk about like the bard from The Witcher.
Yeah, absolutely. Jaskier? Yeah. Because bards are a thing in fantasy stories, but they exist in modern and sci-fi stories as well. They're a little different, but they still exist, where people tell tales, and those tales set to music become popular and move around, and you can get rumors and such that way. There's also, I don't know if you've ever heard of this, something called punk, where people are angry about a thing, so they yell about it. They make wonderful songs about it. And that is a really nice thing to have if there is some sort of brewing animosity between various classes or groups of people. You can have angry fight songs that are played in bars that rile people up, and then guards come to break the scene up. And now you've got yourself a big event because, a group of people that are riled up by music are being attacked by the very people that they were riled up against.
Fantasy mosh pit.
It's a good scene. You could have some fun.
Again, bars in general make for just like fun, entertaining things. If you ever want a good fight, it's easy to get one started in a bar.
Mm-hmm.
And it's good to get your players roped into one. Even if you're good guys, it's easy to get them roped into one because you have people who start fighting each other, and then your players are like, damn, we have to stop this.
Well, and you can also do the same thing with like concerts or like operas or the higher class, I'm quoting fingers here, of music, where you can use them to sort of tell a history of an area, because those pieces of music are usually more for the rich or the nobility, the people that care about the long term, blah blah blah. So you can use that to give like history lessons or long-standing information about an area or about the people that are in the area, without having to do great exposition. It can be sort of set to music. And I'm not saying that I'm expecting game masters to write an opera and perform it for their players. Don't do that. I mean, if you want to, go right ahead. That's know your players, and if they like it, that's great. But
know your players, and know when too much is too much. If you spent all your time writing an opera for your game and you got nothing else, okay, your players are gonna look at you like, really, dude, really?
Like, your players better be in the opera. They better be performing. You want to have them doing checks. Yes, that sounds interesting. I don't know if I'd play that game, but definitely interested in that. But yeah, you can use it to sort of fill in history and sort of even do like, I did this in a game recently where they were tracking down one of the opera singers was being hunted for a piece of jewelry. So they came in as security and watched it, and the opera itself was a retelling of a war between two countries that had happened, 20 years beforehand, which was actually a hidden backstory for one of the players that they didn't know about. And it wasn't until much later in the game they realized that actually was the story, and it was just sort of building that in. And you can do that sort of thing with music.
It's really interesting what you can do here. And again, Josh said it's not just about background music, but if you're ever trying to use the music angle here, and like you want to tell the history, or you want to tell the punk rock, whatever they're screaming about, use a modern song as your background music and then lay exposition in front of it. Okay. It conveys what you're trying to do, which means like if you're playing something elegant and classy, like, oh, you're at an opera and this is what the opera is about. Okay. It also helps kind of feel yourself into that mood there. Just a little trick that I've seen done in terms of bringing music into the forefront for things, especially if you can't write yourself in your own opera. So,
well, and having background music, having just something playing in the background does wonders for filling in the pauses and breaks. It keeps that emotion, that movement going without you having to just constantly talk. So, which is good because, a little bit of break is really nice for everybody involved. And that brings to the third thing we're talking about. We talked about food, we talked about music. The last thing we got is art.
That's just interesting because I saw before we started this show, I saw your notes and I was like, art. And I'm like looking over it. I'm like, oh, interesting. This is pretty clever. This some highbrow. Like you got to really think about this. This could be some clever ways to inform your players. So,
Yeah. Well, I think that it's very much in the same way as music and food is that it is a representation of the people that are involved in it. Um, People make art because they need to express something. People make music because they need to express something. People make food because they need to eat. Um, so the expression in art is uh, there's different mediums, different ways that art can be generated. Music is a form of art, but I try and keep that separate because we're doing a lot of theater of the mind. You're not necessarily drawing out pictures and paintings, and putting a lot of music. You can just play music in the background while you do stuff. Um, the art that I look at when I put together a game is usually in like three levels. I do street art or graffiti. I do sort of the art that is sort of sold or like in common areas, things on the walls or like statues, things that are generally accessible to the public, and then sort of gallery art, that the high class, the stuff that goes in the manor or in the executive's office or whatnot. And so those three tiers are uh, they represent different people, right? They represent different parts of your society. Your graffiti, your street art, that is, the people on the street. Those are the people that are angry with what's going on, or those are like the cultists spreading messages, or those are the hobos leaving, you know, whatever. It is a group of people that have no specific location, or they're trying to get something together. The public accessible art, your parks, your the art inside of restaurants or inside of bars or inside of offices. This is just sort of like the general malaise of the people. The what am I trying to say here? It's the basic. It's the thing that you expect from the normal population, from the average citizen. The
if you
NPCs
go to
without
like a
names.
street fair, it's just a bunch of those types of art. Like it's normal things that people do. Maybe they're trying to make a quick buck on Etsy. Maybe they're,
Yeah,
maybe it's a hobby. Maybe they are doing caricatures of people. Maybe they like to paint quick scenes, or they whatever it might be. Like that's the type of kind of very normal, I would say normal people art is kind of where you're going with the street art.
yeah. But I'm not saying that it has to be boring. It can still inform your players about that population, that sort of middle person, middle class. It's do they have enough money that you'd expect art to be in people's houses? Or is this like for tourists? Is that the area you're in? Is this like, what level of art is there? Are these knockoffs? Are these just, children's drawings? Because that can sort of tell you what's going on with that population. Is there even that population available? Or is it extremely stratified in classes? And then, of course, the galleries, that highbrow art, is um, is less about what's in the art and more about the fact that it exists, because that is the opulence, the signs of wealth that you were talking about earlier with your gala. Um, you can just you can describe the fact that they exist, and it informs your players about the people that display them.
It's very true. I mean, again, you can go the route of like again, famous painting. Your players recognize it. Like it's whatever that might be. It lets you be informed that this person who holds this either regards art highly, or they are so wealthy and connected that they have a very priceless piece of art in their possession.
Yeah, you could even go so far as you walk into this you know um, domed room with these massively high walls and curved ceiling, and then in the center of the room there is a giant sculpture uh, of clockwork mechanisms that are turning and whirling and seem to be pulling light from various sources and lighting up and turning down and then making strange noises and such. And you're like, well, what is it? What sort of machination is this? What machine are we going to have to face or fight? And no, it's just some dude's sculpture that he bought because he felt like it. And now you know what sort of person you're dealing with. This person has too much money and not enough sense. And this could be interesting.
So I think the most interesting thing is, we've given examples of all this, and you've done a great job laying it out. But how does this work to the player? Moving into a scene with this, like how do you? It's not just to lay the dressing, but maybe make the player also pick up on the hints. I think we've kind of covered a couple of these, but maybe you can lay it out for me, Josh.
Well, okay, so you got a player. Let's say fantasy setting. Player comes into a town. They're going to walk in. On the outskirts of town is probably going to be the poorer area. So you walk in and you could see a guard roughing up somebody who has just been, painting on the side of a building, and you can read the message, whatever it is. It could be like a symbol. And then you go into the inn and they're serving, they'll be serving the food that highlights the current conditions. One of the things I've played with before is where you can see all the NPCs are eating, basically gruel with stale bread and just murky beer. And the bartender sees that you've got some money and they're offering you, choice cuts of meat and whatnot. And stuff they don't normally have. They don't normally sell to the rest of the people. So now you're showing that these people have less than even you're wandering travelers. You could have, like I said before, the bar fight because of the musician is a lot of fun, because now you know that the guards are against whatever this protest song is. Whatever these riling up the citizens, can't have that. Got to keep them underfoot. And this all leads to you knowing that this poor area is not happy with the ruling class, and there can be violence. And it's up to your players to decide what they want to do with that. If they want to be involved in the violence, or if they want to make a quick buck and put it down.
That's true. Again, you can flip this on its head and you can go into the rich part of town, I suppose. And there you can have people, they're serving their cafe lattes at their table on the streets. They have little foo-foo dogs or animals. I'm going with the a little bit more modern day. I don't think you'd have.
Oh, why not? You can't imagine little poodles and stuff running around in a fantasy world. Like, they are so well off in the rich part of town. They don't even have to worry about getting, big angry dogs to protect them. No, they've got puddles of
Everyone
of
has a teacup Yorkie. Everyone has a teacup Yorkie.
Because it's the thing, darling. I traded in my swords years ago. Yeah. And you've got buskers on the corners playing jaunty tunes, and you've got, galleries of art that are just like stores where you can go buy fancy paintings, but you don't even buy the paintings. You just sort of see the ones you like and then hire that artist for your gallery, darling. And this is, you're talking about a rich area. You're talking about a place that doesn't care, that is so far away from whatever violence the rest of the world has that they may not understand the troubles of the rest of the people. And yeah, that's very informative. That fills out a lot of the information about your world. And it doesn't have to be anything, really crazy. I would avoid the teacup Yorkies because, your players are going to want one, and that's going to be a problem. You go into a cave with some goblins or something like that.
You have the
that thing's
goblins eat the teacup Yorkie, and then your players are
be
sad.
barking. They can't stealth at all. It's terrible. Yeah, it's bad.
You see, when your players do something silly, you punish them for it. That's what you do.
I wasn't gonna go eat the dog, but like,
well, okay, you have the dog barking so they can't stealth through this and they get ambushed by goblins. Like, okay, maybe your players think twice about buying a teacup Yorkie because it seemed like a terribly awful idea at the time.
it's hilarious, but like a bad idea. No, but, and that's pretty much how I would put food, music, and art into a game, is as a way to sort of inform your players about the area. You don't have to go crazy with it, but it should exist in your world somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, again, like I said, it is the final piece of dressing on your cake. It's the decorations. When you have time to do this, you have time to you better have everything else pretty well fleshed out. It allows you to inform, because it allows you to inform so much about different people. It allows you to inform them with their dress, their how they live, where they live, things like that, and it lets you get different ideas and things like that. It lets you set up different encounters as well, depending on how they work out. So yeah, no, these are all great things to do. Again, after you've done all the other stuff, this is a after you're done with everything else, then add these things, because they add that nice little flair. You have anything else you want to add to this one, Josh?
I think the last thing I'd like to bring up, as I've said before, I'm working on a cyberpunk story, and food, music, and art are not the last thing in those stories, because a lot of those stories, the ones I've been reading, the ones I've been working off of, it is style over substance, baby. It is all of that up front and none of the background. The cyberpunk system, Cyberpunk Red and Cyberpunk 2020, one of the character classes is just a rocker boy, and that's what they do. They play music. That's the whole point.
Sci-fi
it's not like a bard
there.
class. they're not casting spells. They're just having concerts. Yeah. No, and it is something to think about. Try and keep it, more substance over style, but
have fun with it once you get there. That's all I'll say. And again, even a little bit can go a long way. So that's going to wrap us up for this episode. If you have any thoughts about adding food, music, and art into your games, let us know. levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com or facebook.com/levelupyourgaming. Also, we are on YouTube, so go ahead and smash the like button there. Otherwise, review, recommend to a friend, subscribe to the podcast. All those good things helps get more searchable. And that's going to wrap us up for the week. So for Josh, I'm Aaron. Have a great week, everyone.
Bye.